The vast crystalline dome of the Galactic Council's judgment chamber stretched impossibly high above Ambassador Michael Reynolds. 7 tiers of alien representatives from 1,000 worlds surrounded the central platform where he stood alone, a solitary figure in a simple Navy uniform facing the most powerful governing body in known space. Murmurs and clicks from countless alien species echoed throughout the chamber, their strange eyes fixed on the human with mixtures of curiosity, disdain, and fear. Silence, boomed High Counselor Vexistari, his translucent appendages rippling with bioluminescent anger as he rose from the central dais. The chamber immediately fell quiet. The human will explain the unprovoked decimation of the hegemony's Third Fleet or face immediate planetary quarantine. Reynolds stood straight, his weathered face betraying no emotion despite the gravity of the situation. Behind him, Earth's fate hung in the balance. One wrong word could lead to the isolation of humanity or worse, a full-scale invasion by the combined forces of the galactic hegemony. Unprovoked? His voice carried effortlessly through the chamber, amplified by unseen technology. With respect, High Counselor, I believe the Council has been misled. Angry chattering erupted from the hegemony delegation. Admiral Croth, a tall insectoid creature with armored plating and compound eyes that flashed with rage, stepped forward from his delegation. The human lies. Croth's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. Their primitive fleet ambushed our peaceful patrol vessels without warning or provocation. 20,000 of our finest warriors lost. 3 dreadnoughts destroyed. The hegemony demands justice. Reynolds remained calm as he accessed a small device on his wrist. I have evidence suggesting otherwise, honored council members. With a subtle gesture, he activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. The air shimmered and revealed a 3-dimensional star map of Earth's solar system. Around it, previously invisible, structures appeared. Massive military installations, with weapons pointed directly at Earth. These are the hegemony's secret military installations surrounding Earth's solar system, Reynolds explained. Established 2 years ago, without our knowledge or the Council's approval. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers and exclamations. Several council members rose to their feet, appendages and tentacles gesturing wildly. Impossible, shrieked Admiral Croth, stalking toward the hologram. This human fabricates evidence. Their primitive species lacks the technology to detect our cloaked outposts. Yet we destroyed your fleet all the same, Reynolds replied calmly. A fleet your emperor assured this council didn't exist. High Counselor Vexitari's 6 eyes narrowed as he studied the hologram. These are serious accusations, Ambassador Reynolds. The hegemony has been a stabilizing force in this quadrant for millennia. A stabilizing force that planned to invade and strip mine our world, Reynolds countered. We have more evidence. The hologram shifted to show footage from the battle that had brought them to this moment. Human vessels, seemingly crude by galactic standards, moved with surprising coordination against the massive hegemony warships. The Council watched in stunned silence as the supposedly inferior human technology systematically dismantled the invincible hegemony fleet with precision, strikes and tactics no alien military had ever encountered. We intercepted their attack. Plans 3 months ago, Reynolds continued. We attempted peaceful contact 17 times. All requests were ignored. When their fleet moved into strike position around Jupiter, we had no choice but to defend ourselves. The final footage showed the hegemony's flagship, a vessel the size of a small moon, collapsing in on itself as human fighters executed maneuvers that defied conventional physics. That's not possible, whispered a delegate from the Centauri Collective, a species known for their advanced quantum technology. Those human ships are using displacement fields we've only theorized about. Reynolds turned to face the entire council, his voice firm but measured. We came in peace. We requested nothing but to be left alone. Your emperor decided our resources were too valuable, our planet too strategically positioned. He assumed we would be easily conquered. He gestured to the final moments of the battle footage. That was his mistake. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. A species the hegemony had dismissed as barely space-capable had not only detected their cloaked installations but defeated their most powerful fleet using technology the rest of the galaxy believed impossible for humans to possess. High Counselor Vexistari turned to Admiral Croth. Is this true? Did the hegemony establish military installations in the Sol system without council authorization? Before Croth could respond, the chamber door slid open. A new figure entered, tall, regal, with 6 arms and a crystalline exoskeleton that caught the light. Emperor Drozax himself, ruler of the hegemony, strode into the chamber flanked by royal guards. "This is an outrage." Drozax's voice boomed without technological amplification. "The humans distort the truth. Those installations were defensive measures only, established after we detected unusual energy signatures from their primitive world." Reynolds didn't flinch as the Emperor approached. "Defensive measures aimed directly at our cities, with invasion plans specifically targeting our civilian populations." The hologram changed again, displaying translated hegemony military documents with invasion strategies, resource extraction plans, and population control protocols. "Earth was to be the first," Reynolds continued, "then Mars, then our entire system. And after us, how many other developing worlds would suffer the same fate? How many already have?" Murmurs spread through the chamber as representatives from smaller worlds exchanged glances. The hegemony had always claimed its expansions were peaceful integrations, not conquests. Emperor Drozax's exoskeleton flushed with color, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. "The human speaks treason. The hegemony brings order to chaos, civilization to primitives. We have stood as the galaxy's protectors for 50,000 years, and yet you feared us enough to plan our destruction," Reynolds said quietly. "What does that tell you about who truly threatens galactic stability?" Vex Tari raised his appendages for silence. "The Council must deliberate on this evidence. We will call witnesses from both sides and determine the truth of these serious allegations." "There is no time," Reynolds replied, his voice suddenly hard. "Your Emperor sends you to beg for mercy while planning his next assault. Our intelligence confirms the hegemony is mobilizing its main fleet even as we speak." Emperor Drozax's guards moved closer to their ruler, weapons at ready. "You dare accuse me of deception in these sacred chambers? I came to offer peace despite your unprovoked attack." Reynolds stood his ground. "We aren't here to be judged, Emperor. We're here to issue a warning." The human ambassador turned to address the entire council. "Humanity wishes peaceful relations with all species. We have no territorial ambitions beyond our solar system, but we will defend ourselves with all necessary force." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled delegates. "The hegemony has one standard week: to withdraw all military forces within 50 light years of Earth. All military installations near our system will be dismantled. If these terms are not met, we will consider it an act of continued aggression." Emperor Drozax laughed, the sound echoing harshly through the chamber. "You threaten the hegemony? Our main fleet consists of 10,000 warships. You defeated a mere patrol force through trickery and surprise. You cannot stand against our full might." Reynolds smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "We won't have to, Emperor. Your ships still use antimatter reactor cores with resonance frequency vulnerabilities, frequencies we've now identified." The color drained from Drozax's exoskeleton. "That's not possible. That information is protected by our highest encryption." "Was protected," Reynolds corrected. "We have sent diplomatic envoys to every world in this council with evidence of the hegemony's true intentions, along with defensive technologies to protect against your aggression." He turned back to High Counselor Vex Tari. "Humanity doesn't want war. We don't want vengeance, but we will not be conquered, and we will not stand by while the hegemony threatens developing worlds under the guise of protection." The council chamber buzzed with urgent conversations as species that had lived under hegemony influence for centuries began to reconsider their allegiances. Representatives from smaller worlds approached Reynolds with furtive gestures, seeking private audiences. As the session adjourned in disarray, Reynolds transmitted one final message to his superiors on Earth. "First contact made. Warning delivered. Prepare for possible escalation." In the Earth's orbital command center, General Diana Foster watched the transmission with her staff, faces grim yet determined. "So it begins," she murmured. "Alert all fleets. Operation Lighthouse is now active." Across the solar system, hidden human installations powered up, preparing for a conflict that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Commander Elena Vasquez stalked through the curved corridors of Luna Base, her footsteps echoing against the polished metal floors. The Earth hung in the viewport like a blue jewel against the black void, deceptively peaceful despite the crisis unfolding. Behind her, Director Thomas Wright struggled to keep pace, his civilian attire marking him as out of place in the military headquarters carved deep into the lunar regolith. "The hegemony delegation is lying," Vasquez announced without preamble as they entered the war room. General Marcus Foster stood before a massive holographic display showing fleet movements across the solar system. The room fell silent as the 24 officers and analysts turned to face her. Vasquez tossed a data tablet onto the central table, where it clattered loudly. "Their diplomatic overtures are a sham. Our deep space reconnaissance confirms they're regrouping their forces even while begging for peace at the Council." The tablet projected its contents upward, revealing intercepted communications and surveillance footage. The room's lighting dimmed automatically as the holographic display showed hegemony shipyards operating at maximum capacity, thousands of warships being mobilized from across their territory. "These images were captured 12 hours ago by our stealth drones in the Rigel sector," Wright added, his voice tight with tension. "The Emperor's apparent surrender was merely a delaying tactic while they assemble an armada, 10 times larger than the first." General Foster's weathered face remained impassive as he studied the projections. A veteran of Earth's unification wars, he had seen enough combat to know when a decisive moment approached. "They still don't understand what they're dealing with," he muttered, enlarging one section of the display showing the hegemony's new flagship under construction. "They think the Third Fleet's defeat was a fluke, or worse, that we had help from other species." Wright laughed bitterly, running a hand through his gray hair. "They can't conceive that humans developed quantum displacement technology on our own. Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming firepower, not innovation." The gathered officers exchanged glances. For decades, humanity had hidden its true technological progress from alien observers, presenting a facade of primitive space travel, while secretly developing technologies that even the most advanced Council species had only theorized about. "What's the status of the Council deliberations?" Foster asked, turning to face the newcomers fully. Vasquez's expression hardened. "Divided. The smaller worlds are breaking away from hegemony influence, but slowly. They fear retaliation. Meanwhile, Emperor Drozax plays the victim, claiming our defensive actions were unprovoked aggression." The doors hissed open as Dr. Amara Jackson entered, her dark eyes bright with excitement despite the tense atmosphere. Unlike the others, she wore a civilian lab coat with the United Earth Science Division emblem. "It's ready," she announced, drawing all eyes in the room. "Project Lighthouse is fully operational." She approached the central console and inserted a crystal data key. The holographic display shifted, showing a network of satellites positioned throughout human-controlled space, each emitting a faint pulse of energy that rippled through nearby sectors. "As of 0600 hours, we have complete sensory coverage of all approach vectors to the Sol system," Jackson explained, manipulating the display to show the network's range. "The satellites use quantum entanglement to communicate instantaneously, bypassing the lightspeed barrier for information transfer." Foster nodded with grim satisfaction. "And the detection capabilities?" "The hegemony believes their new cloaking technology is foolproof," Jackson replied, highlighting several blinking points on the display. "These are their invisible scout ships already probing our defenses. We can track them with 99.8% accuracy, even through dimensional shifts." Wright whistled softly. "They don't realize we've been 3 steps ahead of them since they first scanned our system." Foster turned to the assembled officers. "Maintain alert status, but take no action against their scouts. Let them think their cloaking works." "Sir," a young lieutenant interjected, "shouldn't we intercept them before they gather intelligence on our defenses?" Foster shook his head. "They're seeing exactly what we want them to see. Defensive positions that look formidable but have exploitable weaknesses, weapons emplacements with apparent blind spots, all carefully crafted illusions." Vasquez nodded in understanding. "A trap." "Precisely," Foster confirmed. "The hegemony has existed for 50,000 years through military superiority alone. They've crushed every emerging species that might threaten their dominance. They expect us to either surrender or fight conventionally and be overwhelmed." He manipulated the hologram to show Earth's true defensive capabilities, hundreds of stealth platforms in dimensional space, ready to emerge anywhere in the system within seconds. "So we let this charade play out at the Council?" Vasquez asked. Let them think we're falling for their deception while they gather their forces? Exactly, Foster replied. Meanwhile, we prepare our response. Dr. Jackson cleared her throat. There's more. The quantum displacement drives have been miniaturized as planned. She pressed another control, revealing schematics for devices small enough to fit in a human hand. We can now transport objects or people across interstellar distances without ships. A stunned silence fell over the room. Even among the inner circle of Earth's defense leadership, few had known this technology was so advanced. Mass production status? Foster asked quietly. 20,000 units ready now, with production capacity of 5,000 per day, Jackson answered. The energy requirements are still substantial, but we've solved the stabilization issues. Wright shook his head in amazement. The hegemony doesn't stand a chance. Don't underestimate them, Vasquez warned. They've conquered hundreds of worlds through millennia. They'll have contingencies we haven't anticipated. Foster nodded soberly. Commander Vasquez is right. This will not be easy, and there will be losses. He looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. But humanity will not bow to tyrants, no matter how ancient or powerful. He turned back to the main display, where the hegemony's gathering armada glowed ominously. Director Wright, I need you to coordinate with our allies on the Council. Any species willing to break from the hegemony needs our protection. Already in progress, Wright confirmed. The Centauri Collective and Deltaran Alliance have formally requested defensive technologies. Several others are negotiating secretly. Dr. Jackson, Foster continued, accelerate Project Lighthouse Phase 2. I want our long-range capabilities doubled within 48 hours. The scientist nodded. My team is working in shifts. We'll make it happen. Commander Vasquez, prepare the fleet for dimensional shift on my command. All ships to maintain low-energy profiles until then. Yes, sir, Vasquez acknowledged. Foster straightened, his voice taking on a formal tone. As of this moment, we are on war footing. The next 72 hours will determine not just humanity's future, but the power structure of this galaxy for millennia to come. As the officers dispersed to their stations, Foster remained at the console, studying the movements of the hegemony forces. Beside him, Vasquez lingered. Sir, what do you think their first target will be? Not Earth, Foster replied confidently. Too heavily defended even by what they can see. They'll strike at Proxima Centauri colony first, our largest off-world settlement. They'll think destroying it will demoralize us. Vasquez frowned. The colony has minimal defenses. 40,000 civilians had minimal defenses, Foster corrected, adjusting the display to show a section of space near Proxima Centauri. Hundreds of human vessels waited in dimensional space, invisible to conventional sensors. Operation Checkmate is already in position. Understanding dawned on Vasquez's face. We're letting them attack the colony? We're letting them think they can attack the colony, Foster clarified. Every civilian was evacuated through quantum transport last week. What looks like normal colony activity is automated systems and holograms. He zoomed out the display, showing the full tactical situation. When they commit their forces, we'll have them surrounded on all sides. Vasquez studied the plan, impressed despite herself. They'll have no escape route. That's the idea, Foster said grimly. This ends now. One decisive battle to demonstrate that humanity cannot be conquered. Not by the hegemony, not by anyone. On the central display, a countdown timer appeared. 68, 1437, and descending. The time until the hegemony fleet would reach attack position, across the vacuum of space. Aboard the hegemony's new flagship, Emperor Drozak stood on the command deck, mandibles clicking in anticipation as he reviewed the battle plans. The humans think they've won a great victory, he told his assembled commanders. They've never faced the full might of the hegemony. When our armada arrives, they will understand true power. Earth will be ours within the week. Admiral Croth bowed respectfully. We've studied their techniques from the previous encounter, Your Eminence. They will find no advantage this time. Good, Drozak replied, his exoskeleton gleaming under the command deck's lights. Proceed as planned. Let us teach these upstart primates their proper place in our galaxy. Little did he know that back on Luna Base, General Foster was saying almost the exact same words about the hegemony. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had devolved into chaos. The massive chamber, normally a place of dignified debate, now resembled a battleground of words as delegates shouted accusations across the tiered rows. Holographic displays flickered with competing data, as species that had coexisted peacefully for centuries now stood divided. High Counselor Vexitari's voice boomed through amplifiers as he struggled to maintain order, his translucent appendages flashing warning colors. In the center of it all stood two figures, Ambassador Michael Reynolds of Earth and Emperor Drozax himself, the ruler of the hegemony having made the unprecedented decision to attend personally, a sign of how desperate the situation had become in just 3 days since the initial confrontation. Silence. Vexitari finally roared, the chamber's acoustics amplifying his voice to painful levels. The room gradually quieted, though tension remained thick in the air. We will conduct these proceedings with the dignity befitting this council. Reynolds stood calm in his simple naval uniform, a stark contrast to Drozax's ornate ceremonial armor with its gleaming crystalline exoskeleton and pulsing bioluminescent patterns that signaled his royal status. The evidence is irrefutable, Reynolds stated, his voice clear and unwavering. The hegemony continues military preparations while feigning peaceful intentions here. He gestured, and new holographic images appeared, massive shipyards operating at full capacity, warships moving into formation, weapons being loaded onto transport vessels. These images were captured less than 6 hours ago, Reynolds continued. While Emperor Drozax speaks of peace in these chambers, his empire prepares for the largest military operation in 500 years. Drozax's 6 eyes narrowed to glowing slits. These are defensive measures only. After your unprovoked attack on our peaceful Third Fleet, the hegemony must protect itself. Is that why your shipyards are producing offensive weaponry at triple capacity? Reynolds challenged, displaying new intelligence gathered by Project Lighthouse. The images showed planet-killer missiles being loaded onto hegemony dreadnoughts. Is that why your commanders have orders to target Earth civilian populations first? He touched another control and audio recordings played. Translated, hegemony military commands ordering the targeting of Earth's largest population centers with antimatter weapons. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For centuries, the hegemony had presented itself as a civilizing force in the galaxy, bringing order and stability. Now many species were seeing its true nature for the first time. These recordings are fabricated, Drozax hissed, his mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. The humans possess technology far beyond their development level. They must have received illegal assistance from council species. We developed our technology ourselves, Reynolds replied evenly. Unlike the hegemony, which has stolen innovations from conquered worlds for millennia and claimed them as their own. This sparked another round of shouting as various delegates recognized the truth in Reynolds' words. Many species had seen their scientific breakthroughs mysteriously appear in hegemony technology shortly after first contact. Humans are dangerous. Drozax finally abandoned pretense, his voice rising to a screech that required no amplification. They advanced too quickly, developed technologies that should take millennia in mere decades. Their minds work differently, unpredictably. If left unchecked, they will dominate us all. The representatives of smaller worlds murmured in agreement, their fear of humanity's rapid rise evident. Several delegates from worlds that had long existed under hegemony protection nodded vigorously. We never wanted dominance, Reynolds countered, turning to address the full council. We wanted peaceful trade, cultural exchange, the opportunity to learn from species with histories spanning millions of years. He pointed directly at Emperor Drozax. It was the hegemony that surrounded our system with weapons. It was the hegemony that ignored our attempts at diplomatic contact. It was the hegemony that moved its fleet into attack position. Reynolds' voice hardened. But make no mistake, we will defend ourselves. And any who stand with the hegemony against Earth will share in their fate. The threat hung in the air, causing several delegations to shift uncomfortably in their seats. The humans' calm delivery made it all the more chilling. High Counselor Vexitari raised his appendages for attention. The council has reviewed the evidence presented by both parties. We find sufficient cause for concern regarding the hegemony's actions toward Earth. Emperor Drozax's exoskeleton flushed with angry colors. This council has no authority over the internal security operations of the hegemony. We have been the stabilizing force in this galaxy, while these humans were still living in caves. And perhaps that time has passed, came a new voice. Delegate Moral of the Centauri Collective stood, his crystalline form catching the light. For too long, we have allowed the hegemony to act without oversight under the guise of maintaining galactic stability. Other delegates began to rise, representatives from the Deltaran Alliance, the Futurian Confederation, and a dozen smaller worlds that had long chafed under hegemony influence. The Centauri Collective withdraws from all defense treaties with the hegemony, Moral announced formally. We recognize Earth's right to defend itself against aggression and offer technical assistance to any world seeking independence from hegemony control. Drozax's guards moved closer to their emperor, weapons ready as the chamber erupted once more. The hegemony delegation shouted threats of reprisal, while newly emboldened smaller worlds declared their independence one after another. High Counselor Vex's Tari struggled to regain control. This council session will adjourn for 1 standard hour, while delegations consult with their governments. As the representatives began filing out, Reynolds noticed several delegates approaching him discreetly, representatives of worlds that officially remained neutral, but were clearly reconsidering their positions. In a private antechamber, Reynolds met with the Centauri delegate Moral and representatives from a dozen other species. Their conversation was guarded, conducted with quantum encryption devices that prevented eavesdropping. Your evidence is compelling. Ambassador, Moral said, his crystalline voice tinkling like wind chimes. But we need assurances. If we stand against the hegemony and they prevail against Earth, we face extinction. Reynolds nodded gravely. We understand the risk you take. That's why we're prepared to share defensive technologies immediately. He produced a small device and activated it, displaying schematics for shield systems far more advanced than anything the assembled delegates had seen before. This will neutralize the hegemony's primary weapons, Reynolds explained. We ask nothing in return except that you remain neutral in the coming conflict. Defend your worlds if attacked, but do not join the fight unless absolutely necessary. The delegates exchanged glances, clearly impressed by both the technology and the humans' restraint in not demanding military alliance. How can you be so confident? Asked a representative from the Futurian Confederation, her bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with anxiety. The hegemony controls 10,000 worlds. Their military might is unmatched in the galaxy's history. Reynolds smiled slightly. Because we understand something the Emperor does not. This isn't about military might, it's about adaptability. For 50,000 years, the hegemony has crushed opposition through overwhelming force. They've never needed to innovate, to think creatively. And humans have, Moral observed. It's how we survived on Earth, Reynolds confirmed. Our planet tried to kill us countless times through natural disasters, climate shifts, predators. We survived because we adapted, invented, cooperated. The hegemony has never faced a species like us before. As the delegates absorbed this, a junior aide rushed in, clearly agitated. Ambassador Reynolds! The hegemony fleet has moved. They've entered the Proxima Centauri system. Reynolds' expression remained calm, though his eyes hardened. Earlier than expected. Excuse me, delegates. He stepped away and activated his secure communicator. General Foster, the hegemony has made its move. Foster's voice came through clearly despite the vast distance. Confirmed. Operation Checkmate is in position. All civilians were evacuated as planned. Casualties? None so far. They're still approaching the colony, haven't opened fire yet. Reynolds took a deep breath. Proceed as planned, General. No mercy for their military vessels, but I want escape pods protected. We don't slaughter their troops. Understood, Ambassador. Reynolds turned back to the assembled delegates who had been watching the exchange with intense interest. It appears Emperor Drozax has chosen to act rather than talk. The hegemony fleet is attacking our Proxima Centauri colony. Gasps and murmurs ran through the group. Then you are doomed, the Futurian representative said sadly. That colony has minimal defenses and your main fleet is in the Sol system. Reynolds' expression remained impassive. Is it? Before anyone could respond, the doors burst open and Emperor Drozax stormed in, flanked by his guards. His exoskeleton pulsed with triumph. Your colony burns, human, he announced, mandibles clicking in satisfaction. This is but the first step. When your people see how easily we destroyed your largest off-world settlement, they will surrender rather than face the same fate. The void between stars erupted with light as the largest fleet ever assembled in the Milky Way emerged from hyperspace. 10,000 hegemony warships alongside vessels from 24 allied species formed a wall of destructive potential never before witnessed in the galaxy's long history. The fleet stretched across an area larger than Earth's solar system, weapons primed and shields at maximum power. Emperor Drozak stood on his new flagship's command deck, the Eternal Dominion, a vessel so massive it could house the population of a small moon. His crystalline exoskeleton gleamed under the command deck's harsh lights as he surveyed the tactical displays showing his armada's formation. This would be the defining moment of his 500-year reign, the day he crushed the human upstarts and reasserted hegemony dominance over the galaxy. Magnificent, isn't it? He said to Admiral Croth, who stood rigidly at attention beside him. The combined might of 1,000 worlds united under our banner. Indeed, Your Eminence, Croth replied, mandibles clicking in satisfaction. The humans have no chance. Even with their unusual tactics, they cannot stand against such overwhelming force. The massive armada approached Proxima Centauri, Earth's nearest stellar neighbor and home to humanity's largest off-world colony. Intelligence suggested the human fleet was concentrated there after the disastrous first engagement. Baitun, perfect target to cripple Earth's defenses and morale in one strike. Report from our advance. Scouts, announced the sensor officer, a multi-eyed creature from a species long subjugated by the hegemony. No signs of human defensive positions. The colony appears abandoned. Drozak's eyes narrowed. Impossible. Our intelligence confirmed they've reinforced the colony with their main fleet after our first attack failed. Scans confirm. Your Eminence, the officer insisted, appendages working frantically across control surfaces. No energy signatures consistent with human vessels. The colony infrastructure remains, but life signs are minimal. It's a trap, Croth whispered. But too late. Space itself seemed to fold around the hegemony fleet as hundreds of human vessels materialized from quantum displacement. Not the handful of ships that had defeated the Third Fleet, but a full battle group that had remained hidden from galactic detection through technology the hegemony had believed impossible. Leading them was the UNS Invictus, a sleek vessel that seemed small compared to the hegemony dreadnoughts, but bristled with weapons unlike anything seen in the galaxy before. On its bridge, Captain James Mercer studied the tactical display with steady eyes. All ships execute Operation Checkmate, Mercer ordered calmly into his communicator. Phase 1 commence. The human vessels didn't attack directly as expected. Instead, they activated devices that created gravitational distortions, disrupting the carefully planned hegemony formation and causing ships to collide with one another in the suddenly warped space. Shields flared and failed as vessels designed for combat in normal spacetime found themselves unable to compensate for the shifting gravitational waves. What is happening? Drozak demanded as the Eternal Dominion shuddered, its navigation system struggling to maintain position. Counterattack immediately. We cannot target them, Your Eminence, Croth replied, frantically working the weapons console. Their ships keep shifting position faster than our targeting systems can track. On the Invictus, Captain Mercer watched the chaos with grim satisfaction. Phase 2, he ordered. Deploy the microdrones. From the human ships, swarms of devices no larger than insects launched toward the hegemony fleet. Trillions of microscopic machines, each carrying quantum entanglement technology that allowed them to bypass the most sophisticated shields. Once inside the enemy vessels, the drones infiltrated critical systems, weapons, life support, propulsion, communications. Ship after ship in the hegemony fleet went dark, their crews suddenly finding themselves in failing vessels with no way to fight back or communicate with the fleet. Your Eminence, we're being boarded, an officer reported frantically. Security systems detect infiltration in all critical areas. Boarded? Impossible. There are no enemy vessels docked with us. Drozak's exoskeleton flushed with rage and fear. Not conventional boarding parties. Your Eminence, the security chief explained, showing magnified images of the microdrones infiltrating through ventilation systems, power conduits, and even the molecular gaps in hull plating. These devices, we've never seen anything like them. On the command deck of the Eternal Dominion, lights flickered and gravity fluctuated as systems began failing one by one. Emergency backup power engaged, bathing the chamber in red emergency lighting. Send distress calls to all allied vessels, Drozak commanded. Coordinate a counterattack immediately. "Communications are down, Your Eminence," reported a communications officer, panic evident in his voice. "We're isolated." Through the massive viewport, Drozax watched in horror as his Grand Armada, the greatest fleet ever assembled in the galaxy's long history, disintegrated into chaos. Ships drifted powerless, collided with one another, or attempted desperate evasive maneuvers only to find their controls unresponsive. Meanwhile, the human vessels moved with perfect coordination, systematically neutralizing any hegemony ships that still maintained fighting capability, not destroying them outright but disabling them with surgical precision. "Your Eminence," Admiral Croth reported, his voice hollow with disbelief. 80% of our fleet has been neutralized. No significant damage to human forces detected." "Impossible," Drozax whispered, watching his lifelong dreams of galactic domination crumble before his eyes. "We outnumbered them 10-1. We had superior firepower, superior numbers, but inferior tactics." "Emperor!" came a new voice from behind him. Drozax whirled to see human soldiers materializing directly onto his command deck, appearing from thin air through some unknown technology. They wore sleek combat armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy, but did not immediately fire. Captain Mercer stepped forward from the group, removing his helmet to reveal a face weathered by years of command but with eyes sharp with intelligence. "How?" Drozax demanded as his royal guards moved protectively around him, weapons raised. "How is this possible?" Mercer gestured, and the hegemony guards' weapons suddenly disassembled themselves, components clattering to the deck as micro-drones emerged from within them. "Because you never bothered to understand us, Emperor," Mercer replied calmly. "You saw our shorter lifespans and assumed we think short-term. You saw our divisions and assumed weakness instead of diversity of thought. You saw our emotions and assumed irrationality instead of passion." He gestured to the devastation visible through the viewport. "That was your final mistake." The command deck fell silent as the once mighty Emperor of the hegemony found himself speechless for perhaps the first time in his long life. "What happens now?" he finally asked, his voice barely audible. "Now," Mercer replied, "you surrender, unconditionally." Throughout the massive fleet, similar scenes played out as human forces secured vessel after vessel, not with overwhelming firepower, but with technological superiority that rendered the hegemony's numerical advantage meaningless. Unlike the hegemony, which would have slaughtered defeated enemies, the humans systematically disabled life-threatening injuries and began providing medical assistance to injured alien crew members. On the Invictus, Lieutenant Olivia Rivera coordinated rescue operations as reports flooded in from across the battlefield. "Status update," she called out to her team of officers monitoring the situation. "Over 9,000 enemy vessels disabled." "Captain," reported her tactical officer, "approximately 3 million crew members being processed. Medical teams are deploying to vessels with life support failures. Casualty estimates are surprisingly low. It seems most of the micro-drones targeted systems rather than personnel." "As intended," Rivera confirmed. "General Foster was explicit. We demonstrate our power without unnecessary bloodshed." "Some of the Allied species vessels are attempting to surrender formally," another officer noted. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies requesting terms." Rivera nodded. "Accept all surrenders. Standard protocol. Secure weapons, provide medical aid, prepare for transport to detention centers." A communications officer turned from his console. "Lieutenant, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's General Foster." The main screen activated to show Foster's weathered face. "Report, Lieutenant." "Operation Checkmate successful, General," Rivera replied crisply. "The hegemony fleet has been neutralized with minimal casualties on both sides. Captain Mercer has secured Emperor Drozax and the hegemony command staff." Foster nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "Excellent work." "And our losses?" 7 ships damaged, 2 destroyed. Most crew successfully evacuated via emergency quantum transport before destruction. "And the colony?" "Untouched, sir. They never got close enough to open fire." "Very good," Foster said. "I've informed Ambassador Reynolds at the Council. Prepare Emperor Drozax for transport to Earth. The formal surrender will take place before the full Galactic Council." As the transmission ended, Rivera turned to her bridge crew. "You heard the General. Let's finish securing this fleet and get these people home." Throughout the The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from every spacefaring species in the known galaxy crowded the 7 tiers, with countless others watching via quantum transmission from their homeworlds. The crystalline dome overhead seemed to strain to contain the historic gathering, as beings of every conceivable form waited in tense silence for the proceedings to begin. At the center stood not just Ambassador Michael Reynolds, but Earth's unified leadership, President Olivia Tanaka in her formal diplomatic attire, General Marcus Foster in his dress uniform adorned with the simple insignia of Earth's Defense Force, and the heads of each continental alliance. Their faces revealed nothing as they waited, standing tall despite the gravity of the moment and the countless alien eyes upon them. High Counselor Vexitari raised his luminescent appendages for silence, though none was needed. "This emergency session of the Galactic Council will now commence," his amplified voice echoed. "We are gathered to witness an unprecedented event in our shared history." The massive doors at the far end of the chamber slid open. A collective murmur rose from the assembled delegates as Emperor Drozax entered, not striding proudly as he had days before, but walking slowly, his once gleaming exoskeleton now dull and colorless. Behind him came the remnants of his high command, Admiral Croth and 5 other hegemony leaders, all in postures of complete submission. The Emperor, who had ruled 10,000 worlds for 5 centuries, now stood before the humans he had dismissed as primitives, his 6 eyes downcast. "Emperor Drozax of the Galactic Hegemony comes before this council, and before the representatives of Earth," Vextari announced formally, "to offer terms of surrender following the complete defeat of hegemony forces at the Battle of Proxima Centauri." President Tanaka stepped forward, her dark eyes meeting Drozax's briefly, before addressing the council. 3 standard days ago, the hegemony launched an unprovoked attack against human territory, with the largest military force assembled in 500 years. Their fleet of 10,000 warships was defeated in less than 1 standard hour. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing footage from the battle, the hegemony's massive fleet reduced to drifting hulks by forces that seemed to materialize from nowhere, using technologies many in the council had believed impossible. "This was not the outcome we sought," Tanaka continued, her voice carrying clearly throughout the chamber. "Humanity came to this galactic community seeking peaceful exchange and cooperation. Instead, we found an empire that saw our potential as a threat rather than an opportunity." She gestured to General Foster, who activated a different set of holographic displays, the secret hegemony documents discovered aboard the Eternal Dominion. "These records reveal a pattern spanning millennia," Foster explained, his weathered face grim as he highlighted key sections. "The hegemony has systematically suppressed developing civilizations, harvested resources from pre-spaceflight worlds, and eliminated any species that showed signs of rapid technological advancement." The chamber erupted in shocked conversations as delegates recognized their own worlds in the data, species that had believed themselves equal partners, with the hegemony now seeing the truth of their relationship for the first time. "Earth was targeted because we developed too quickly to control through subtle means," Foster continued once the noise had subsided. "The hegemony planned our complete subjugation, with population reduction protocols that would have eliminated 80% of human life." Emperor Drozax's exoskeleton seemed to shrink further as the evidence of his empire's crimes was displayed for all to see. Many of his former allies now moved away from the hegemony delegation, physical distance marking their political separation. President Tanaka raised her hand, and the displays vanished. "The terms are non-negotiable," she stated, her voice firm but not vindictive. "The hegemony will immediately disband its military forces, with oversight from a coalition of neutral worlds. All conquered territories will vote on independence or new governance, and reparations will be paid to species who suffered under your rule." Drozax looked up at last, his once commanding presence now diminished to that of a supplicant. "And in return?" "In return, we spare your homeworlds," Tanaka replied evenly. "Your people will not suffer for the crimes of their leaders. There will be no planetary bombardments, no occupation forces, no resource extraction." The chamber fell silent at these terms, far more lenient than anyone had expected given the scale of the hegemony's planned atrocities against Earth. High Counselor Vextari stepped forward, his translucent form catching the light. The Council recognizes humanity's right to dictate these terms, given the nature and outcome of the conflict. However, we have concerns about the power vacuum this creates. The hegemony, for all its faults, maintains stability in volatile regions of the galaxy. General Foster nodded in acknowledgement, which is why Earth will establish a new peacekeeping force, open to all species who wish to join, with strict oversight and transparency protocols. Not to control, but to protect. He activated a new display showing a proposed organizational structure, multilateral, with checks and balances that would prevent any single species from dominating. The Terran Alliance, as we propose to call it, would respond only to verified threats against member worlds, with all actions subject to review by an independent council, Foster explained. A murmur ran through the assembly, not fear, but cautious hope. Dr. Amara Jackson stepped forward from the Earth delegation, her lab coat exchanged for formal diplomatic attire. She activated a hologram that displayed technological schematics unlike anything most council members had seen before. Additionally, we offer these: clean energy systems, advanced medical technologies, agricultural improvements, and environmental restoration methods, freely given to all worlds who join the new galactic cooperative. The display expanded to show worlds transformed, barren planets made habitable, polluted atmospheres cleansed, species on the brink of extinction flourishing again. These technologies have transformed Earth over the past century, Jackson explained. They can do the same for any world. We ask only that recipients agree not to weaponize them. Delegate Morrill of the Centauri Collective rose from his seat. Earth offers technological gifts while the hegemony hoarded knowledge. They offer liberation while the hegemony offered subjugation. His crystalline voice resonated through the chamber. The Centauri Collective formally recognizes these terms and pledges support to the proposed Terran Alliance. One by one, other delegations rose to indicate their agreement. Former hegemony subjects eager for true independence. Neutral worlds impressed by humanity's restraint. Even former hegemony allies who recognized the changing galactic order. Emperor Drozax looked up, his voice barely audible even through the chamber's acoustics. Why show mercy when you could destroy us completely? You have the power to reduce our worlds to ash, to take everything as we would have taken from you. President Tanaka approached him, stopping just a few steps away. Because that's the true strength of humanity, Emperor. Not our weapons or our strategies, but our capacity for both justice and forgiveness. We fought because we had to. We show mercy because we choose to. She extended her hand, a human gesture of peace that the translators explained to the watching galaxy. After a long moment, Drozax extended one of his upper limbs in response, completing the symbolic gesture. The terms are accepted, he said, defeat and relief mingling in his voice. High Counselor Vexitari raised his appendages. Let the record show that on this day, the galactic hegemony has surrendered to the forces of Earth, accepting all terms as presented. The hegemony is hereby dissolved as a political entity, its territories to determine their own governance as specified. The formal pronouncement sent a wave of reactions through the chamber, celebration from formerly subjugated species, solemn acknowledgement from neutral parties, and shock from those who had never imagined the mighty hegemony could fall. As the formalities concluded, the Earth delegation prepared to depart. Ambassador Reynolds found himself approached by dozens of species representatives, many seeking private audiences or expressing gratitude for liberation from hegemony influence. This is just the beginning, Reynolds told them. The real work starts now, building something better together than any of us could create alone. In a quiet corner of the chamber, General Foster conferred with Dr. Jackson and Director Wright, away from the diplomatic formalities. How soon can we begin distributing the promised technologies? Foster asked quietly. Jackson consulted her data tablet. The first phase is ready for immediate deployment. Medical systems first, then agricultural improvements. The more advanced energy systems will take time to adapt to different planetary environments. Wright nodded thoughtfully. And the defensive technologies? We need to be selective about those. Basic planetary shields for everyone, Foster decided. More advanced systems only after we've established trust. We didn't defeat one empire just to create another. Some council members are already expressing concern about humanity's power, Wright noted. They see us as the new hegemony, just with a friendlier face.